Alright, time for the second part and last cards of the Eternal set review for the Dusk Road. First we have Inquisitor's Halberd. This is a pretty cool card, so effectively this is a 3-cost 3/3 relic weapon if you can set it up. The best way to do this is the new 1/2 Valkyrie that gives you 2 armor for 2. Basically turning this into a 3/5 weapon by turn 3, which is actually pretty brutal and swingy, because it lets you kill most units that are out at that point in the game and easily survive with a bunch of armor left, and generating a lot of virtual card advantage and tempo, granted that you can use it on another unit the next turn, killing 2 things with your 3-drop basically for 3 power. That's super amazing. And yeah, this might go into a more Valkyrie-centric armory approach with the new Valkyrie and stuff like that. Definitely gonna mess around with this and see if there's potential for that. And in Limited, I mean, even as a 3/1 weapon, it's decent. If you have a bunch of Valkyries, it becomes better. So either way, it's a very playable card as long as you're in Justice and Shadow. Next we have Rooftop Vigilante. Another decent double unit type, Gunslinger and Valkyrie, both relevant. Flying Warcry is also solid. Warcry on a 3-drop is still pretty valuable. Past 3-drops, it drops off a lot I think, but 3-drops are still like pretty good Warcry enablers. And on top, all your units wielding weapons are deadly is potentially a nice keyword. Not sure if the card is gonna be quite good enough to make it in Constructed, but it seems like something that is barely good enough to potentially make it if there's a deck that cares about what she has to offer. And in Limited, a 2/3 flying Warcry with good unit types and potential upside is really good, so this is a pretty good uncommon 3-drop in draft for sure. Next we have Crownwatch Trader. That's kind of an interesting one. We get basically a 5/3 quick draw endurance for 4. Double Justice, double Shadow is not the easiest cost, but a 5/3 quick draw that also gets to block and is immune to like stun and exhaust effects is pretty nice. And basically on defense we have a 3/5 blocker instead of a 5/3, which also makes it a much better blocker. This card is kind of like interesting in how it works with like the swapping. It's definitely an interesting new sort of mechanic, if you want to call it that. And who knows if we're gonna see this a bit more often here and there on some cards. At least I think this won't be the only card that uses this sort of possibility. Kind of an interesting possibility and way to use endurance, basically being able to attack as a good attacker and then block as a good blocker, while having some weaknesses in both modes, sort of. So yeah, interesting card. Just not sure if it's gonna be like making it in Constructed, unfortunately, since there's a bunch of good 4-drops that compete with this, like Argentport, mid-range. Might still just prefer Impending Doom, for example, but not sure. I mean, the 5/3 quick draw endurance thing is also pretty nice, although the flying of Impending Doom makes it a more reliable source of damage in a lot of cases, and also potentially better at blocking against some flyers. But I'm not sure, like, this guy is interesting and a really good weapon carrier, thanks to the quick draw. Like putting a Bloodletter on this is pretty powerful. An 8/6 quick draw endurance is not really beatable in combat. You have to kill him with heart removal, and given that he's multi-faction and has endurance, there's not that many ways you actually can profitably kill him. You have to keep in mind, if the opponent silences him on their turn, you are left with a 3/5, not a 5/3. So that might also be a bit awkward. But yeah, it's an interesting card, and I might give it a try once I have it in Argenport mid-range over the alternatives and see how I like it. And in limited, I mean, it's a great card, so it will always make your deck as long as you can cast it. Next we have Caleb Reborn. A bit underwhelming, unfortunately. I think a 4/4 for 4 with this hefty influence cost is definitely too small. Like, even with the ability that when you play a spell, Caleb gets +1/+1 this turn, since it's only temporary, I think he should be at least like a 4/5 or something, that giving him +1/+1 makes him at least bounce off of a Titan without dying, for example, and makes it a bit more worth it to jump through the hoops of playing this many spells and having like double fire, double primal on 4 exactly to be able to put this out. At least we got the crest for Skycrack already, so it's easier to support him than this cost requirement used to be. The ultimate is kind of nice, basically effectively drawing your card and cycling a bunch of potentially bad cards, like throwing away situational cards or excess power is nice here, and also makes it easier to keep up the fuel for Caleb's ability. Maybe there's, like I said, a spell-based Skycrack tempo deck built around the 1-drop Yeti that grows Fevered Scout and Caleb and a bunch of like spells. But yeah, since I'm low on dust at the moment, it might take a while till I have 4 Calebs to mess around with more fringe ideas like that. Until then it has to remain theoretical. And I mean, in limited, he's still a pretty good card, so you will always pick him if you're in Skycrack, basically. Then we have Iceberg Warchief, another solid Yeti. Your spells deal 1 extra damage, which is really nice with Snow Pelting and cards like Torch that you will definitely be playing. And then all your other Yetis have +1 attack. A 5/4 for 5, that's also a Yeti, is decent with all these abilities, and as we already talked about when we talked about the other Yeti cards, is that Yetis might gravitate more towards a mid-range, sort of good stuff, a bit synergy-driven deck if there is one, and then this card is definitely going to be part of it. And the +1, once again, helps really nice with bonding the 6-drop 4/4 that we talked about before and stuff like that. And in limited, I mean, this is rock solid, especially if you have a Yeti or 2 to support. Then we have Skywalk Enforcer. This is really nice, actually. I really like this card. I just think it might be a bit short of enough good curses to really shine, because Permafrost is the only really good one. Cowardice is probably a bit too narrow-minded for the type of deck that would want this card, since it really only works in hyper-aggressive decks, and cards like Winter's Grasp are just too bad, and Affliction is the kind of card that you usually want to use on a card that dies by being afflicted and not sticks around with the Affliction. Although you still get the buff for Affliction either way, so Affliction theoretically works nice with this, but you don't really want to have 4 Afflictions in your deck, because if the unit you put Affliction on doesn't die, it's not that great. It's still going to be around to block or jump block. Your opponent might silence it off and all that stuff. So yeah, Affliction is just a bit weak too. So we are just a little short on enough good curses, I think, to make this really good. But the flying and basically being like a 3/4 flying for 3 as soon as you play 1 curse is a pretty good stat line already. And once this becomes a 5/4, it's a monster. So I might mess around with this a bit more. My initial attempts were slightly underwhelming, but all in all I think the card's actually pretty powerful. Just that one nice cheap playable curse short of being awesome, basically. And a limited, I mean, a 1/4 flying for 3 is already fine in some decks, and if you have some cards to support it, the range of decks that wants it goes up significantly. Next we have Rindra the Duskblade, probably the best or one of the best Nightfall cards in the set. A 4-cost 5/5, even for double influence in both colors, is pretty amazing for Feln. Also means it survives Annihilate, which is nice. One less cheap removal to tempo you, less to worry about. And yeah, in the type of deck that wants this, Nightfall probably is a pretty nice upside in a way, and Lifesteal and Overwhelm come in handy too, especially the Lifesteal. The Overwhelm is a bit random, like it doesn't really do a whole lot, I think, but the Lifesteal is a pretty big deal, generating a lot of swing in a race, making it super hard for the opponent to attack the turn you drop this, and the next turn you attack and drain them for 5. That is really powerful, or you might even use like a rapid shot on Rindra or something. So yeah, really powerful card, trying to figure out what best to do with Rindra, because there should be a constructed deck around Rindra, some kind of tempo aggressive or aggressive mid-range Feln deck probably, with unseen synergies. I'll let you know once I figured it out. And for limited, I mean, yeah, more or less a bomb, so just pick it. Next we have Recycler, another Grenadin. Here we get a 2/2 for 3, so that's pretty underwhelming. And when one of your other units dies, create and draw a weapon, not a relic weapon, for 2 though, so that's pretty nice. The weapon's called Fix It, gives +3/+2 and Overwhelm. The problem is, first of all, another unit has to die before this dies or gets silenced to get this weapon, and we have to put a 3-cost 2/2 in our deck first. So yeah, and the type of deck that is good at reliably having a unit die to get the Fix It usually doesn't really care about these weapons. Like, the card looks like it's potentially really nice in an aggro deck, but aggro decks would have issues to reliably trigger this early, and also a 3-cost 2/2 is pretty bad in an aggro deck, even though the weapon is fairly cheap at 2. But ultimately you get like a 5-cost 5/4 Overwhelm instead, which is not particularly impressive constructed card. So yeah, in constructed I think this is just falling short on various angles really, but in limited this is pretty good I think, since yeah, it's good stat to cost ratio, has some nice flexibility and so on, and some synergies with some sacrifice cards in Stonescar. Next we have Vicious Highwayman. This card's pretty amazing. It shines in both aggro and mid-range. I think it's probably best in mid-range, because mid-range benefits the most from the lifesteal and the 1 damage ping, allowing you to pick off some small random units on the opposing side, while going aggressive on them and giving you a nice buffer in a race with the lifesteal. Warcry on a 4-drop is not that great, but if it's a 4-drop with charge, it's sort of the same as if the Warcry would be on a 3-drop, so it's still decent. And yeah, charge is always nice against sweepers and relic weapons. This lets you shoot down an Auric Runehammer even through blockers and so on. We all know how good Varus Favor is, so getting another Varus Favor type effect for free on a unit is pretty nice. This is an interesting alternative to Bandit Queen, basically, in decks where Bandit Queen just doesn't do that much because they only have very few units in play usually. So yeah, and Unlimited, this card is a staple too, so it's an incredibly strong card that you always want to pick on site. Next we have Failed Reflection. This is a pretty underwhelming card really. Like in Constructed, once per turn you can throw away like a Grenadin or something to give this +4/+4 permanently, but it's gonna be a vanilla unit, so 6 cost, 8/8 that costs you like your worst unit not very impressive. Even if it keeps growing, the card would need some cool keywords to make it worth it. As a vanilla, it's just a pretty bad card. In limited, it's at least decent. You will usually have some blanked unit that you can throw away and turn this into a board dominating threat. So I'm usually fine putting this in my deck, but even in limited, it can be situationally awkward or bad. So keep that in mind. Your deck should be fairly unit heavy for this to be good enough. Next we have Duskwalker, another interesting Nightfall card, once again in an alliance that I'm not super happy about. Here we get a 4-cost 4/4 with Nightfall, and at night Duskwalker gives us +2 maximum power. So basically you play this on turn 4 and ramp from 4 to 7. So that's pretty cool and pretty powerful. Lets you turn 5 a Zindal's Gift, for example, just to name one, and some other stuff. So it's some really cool situational power ramp boost type of card, sort of like Kindle on a unit. That alone makes me wanna like try and toy around with this and see if there's something powerful that can be done and built with this. But yeah, if it wasn't for Nightfall being needed for the like maximum power, I once again would really hate Nightfall here. But I think it's sort of kind of like a downside to mildly balance the huge tempo boost this guy gives us. It's definitely an interesting card. And in limited, I mean a 4-cost 4/4 is already pretty good, and the rest is just nice bonus. Next we have Agile Death Draw. Guy has Ambush at Night. It's a 5-cost 3/3. Fairly hefty cost, fairly hefty influence again, with double time, double shadow, and your other dinosaurs have +1/+1, making for a nice surprise to like make all your dinosaurs better at blocking as a surprise, even though Death Draw is pretty bad as an ambush unit itself. The problem is there's not enough good dinosaurs in Xenon to really want to go Xenon dinosaurs, I think. Elysian dinosaurs just seems that much better that I don't think this card really has a place right now, especially because I'm also not a fan of the night dinosaurs, even if I would go Xenon dinosaurs. So this would basically just be a 5-cost 3/3 that gives you other dinosaurs +1/+1, which is not that exciting, and probably at least like a power too expensive or something. In limited, if you have enough dinosaurs, this might be decent, but it's still like gonna be pretty mediocre either way, I think. Then we have Curiox Insatiableseeker. This card is theoretically strong enough for all the things that it has going on to be constructed relevant. Getting a Dragon's Eye for free the first turn this hits the enemy player is pretty strong. You obviously want to put this in like a relic spell-based deck with fairly few units. But yeah, in the right circumstances, this card could be a deck-defining powerhouse, and I'm definitely gonna like mess around a bit with like a Moment of Creation deck with a bunch of relics and a lot of spells and Curiox, like, I don't know, Power Stone, maybe Family Charter, stuff like that, and a lot of spells and Curiox, because getting that attack in with the Curiox ultimate is easily game winning, and a 6-cost 7/7 flying that you can put out on like turn 5 with a Power Stone is also really strong, especially given that it's a multi-faction unit. Once again, dodges one of the common cheap removal floating around. And in limited, I mean, even a 6-cost 5/5 flyer with no other text would be a pretty good card. So this is a great card in limited, as long as you can support the hefty influence. Next we have Common Cause, another really cool conditional power fixer here towards the tribal decks. You really need a lot of units and a lot of units of the same tribe for this to be good enough though, since yeah, you might even otherwise you get too many like 1 one unit hands where this doesn't do anything even in your opening hand, and it's only gonna get worse from turn to turn. But yeah, it's at a similar level as Diplomatic Seal in the right decks, or possibly even a bit better, since it might be fixing your colors a little longer and more reliable in some decks than Diplomatic Seal could. Like in Strangers, this is another great addition to the power base of Strangers, for example. Really like the card. It probably also should have gone in my Rakano Gunslingers deck in some number. I simply forgot it when I worked on it, because the set was so new and the card completely slipped my mind. In Limited, this is usually probably not very playable. And last but not least, we have the mentioned Family Charter. This is mostly for like Relics Matter decks. We get a Scout for 1, which is okay. And then later we can just pay 6 and draw 2 cards to cycle it once we don't need the Relic synergies anymore. I think 6 is a bit hefty here, the card could have easily cost like 4 or 5. Let's say 5, because 4 might be a bit cheap for the card being like universally accessible for all factions, but it could have at least cost 5 and still would have been pretty clunky. 6 is just a ton for drawing 2 cards. But yeah, it's nice to have a cheap, colorless relic that does at least a little bit and supports all these cards that care about relics, like Curiox and some of the time Explorers that get stat buffs from relics and so on. And in Limited, it's not exciting, but if your deck is on the slower end and just cares about more card advantage and potential to grind, or just relic synergies, this is the card for you. Alright, that concludes the Dusk Road set review. Now we have talked about all cards at least once for Ranked and Draft. Hope you guys enjoyed it and learned a thing or two as usual. Let me know in the comments what you think, where you disagree with me, and if you have any questions. And I thank you guys for watching and wish everyone again a happy new year and a happy 2018, and look forward to seeing all of you on my stream and my future videos for all of the coming year, and hope we grow stronger and the game grows stronger and Eternal just moves forward into a strong new year, so we see the game we all play and love grow and flourish. Alright everybody, thanks for watching. This is Manu S, and I'm out. Bye.